Lawson is a graduate student at the Gilder Lerman Institute of American History at Pace University. He's been researching the history of redlining in Jacksonville's African American community.
As part of FDR's New Deal, the Homeowners Loan Corporation, or HOLC, released a set of residential security maps in 1938 meant to inform federal mortgage agencies in issuing home loans across America. Neighborhoods were given a grade A through D, with A-rated neighborhoods being deemed best and D-rated neighborhoods being called hazardous and shaded red on the maps. This rating reflected America's existing system of federally sanctioned segregation. Best neighborhoods were almost exclusively white, and hazardous neighborhoods were mainly comprised of minorities. This process is known as redlining. Bruce Mitchell is Senior Research Analyst at the National Community Reinvestment Coalition and explains the redlining process.
It's a systematic approach to valuation of neighborhoods that was imposed by the HOLC and really resulted in which communities were given mortgage loans and which communities were not given mortgage loans. And, you know, in most cases, these HOLC appraisers, my understanding is that they were generally subcontracted to work with the HOLC program, and that they generally had some sort of loan or real estate experience with the area. So what this is, HOLC maps they're a detailed record of how these neighborhoods would have been considered in terms of their lending risk at that time.
Following the Great Depression, the federal government stepped in, creating programs such as the Federal National Mortgage Association, better known as Fannie Mae, to secure home loans and prevent massive foreclosures during times of economic recession.
This modernization of the lending system, it greatly benefits the white middle class. And you see a real expansion of the white middle class during this period, post-war period from the 1940s up to the 1970s. They're greatly benefited by this. In the meantime, black people are not getting the same sort of benefit from this system because they're denied access to a large extent on this lending system that has been created because of redlining.
Jason Richardson is the Director of Research with the National Community Reinvestment Coalition and describes the effects redlining had across the country.
The effect, of course, is that for homeowners, your wealth increases as well, right? You know, if you own a home that's worth $100,000 and I own a home that's worth $500,000, I have 5 times the wealth that you do. So as that goes up, you know, that can be a good thing as long as everybody can participate equally. And generally for most of that period, especially from World War II to about the end of the 70s, most white people could participate pretty easily.
There were 239 cities with HOLC maps, 4 of them Florida cities: Jacksonville, Miami, Tampa, and St. Pete. Bruce Mitchell compared 2 census tracts from Jacksonville, one from an A-rated neighborhood known today as San Marco, located between downtown and the former DuPont estate known as Epping Forest, and one from a D-rated East Side neighborhood around the Jacksonville Jaguars football stadium, once known as Fairfield.
This is a red line track, right? Hazardous grading back in the HOLC map. That track has a life expectancy from birth at this point of 69.1 years. It has a poverty rate of 41%. And in terms of health effects, has obesity rates of 47%, okay? It's also a high minority tract. Contrast this with a tract that's just barely 2 miles away, tract 16400. This has a life expectancy that's 10 years more than that redline tract. It has a poverty rate of 11% and obesity rates of 28% within this tract. And that was a best neighborhood in HOLC mapping. So what I'm trying to say is these areas that were downgraded as hazardous, you just see this concentration of disadvantage and of health effects, where people live shorter lives, they have worst health outcomes, they probably have worst outcomes related to COVID-19 and the current crisis that we're undergoing right now. Then, because they have fewer underlying conditions, then people generally who are in these areas that were the best neighborhoods, that were able to access capital, that were able to maintain higher income communities. It's almost as if we have within our cities 2 different countries existing side by side with each other. It's just created this tremendous disparity within the American urban system.
Jason Richardson.
Generally speaking, we've ended busing, right? So unless parents go to the effort, or if the school district has some sort of a system set up to bus people out of their area, they're going to go to neighborhood schools. And when neighborhoods are extremely segregated, that means schools are going to be extremely segregated. Which then means you have a concentration of poverty in the school system. When you codify this sort of segregation, you empower it with a longevity that otherwise it may not have had. And so you wind up with neighborhoods that haven't just been poor for the last 10 years. They've been poor for the last century, and there's no indication that they're changing. The kind of stunning thing to think about today is that due to the Great Recession and due to a variety of policies that inhibit lending to minorities, today the home ownership rate for African Americans is lower than it was when segregation was legal. That's kind of a stunning admission of failure when you think about that.
Today in Jacksonville, many of the historically black communities listed on the HOLC Redline map have been destroyed via eminent domain claims for the construction and expansion of I-95, I-10, and their massive interchange reconstructed in the last decade, as well as for the expansion of parking for the newly constructed federal courthouse. For Florida Frontiers, I'm Justin Lawson, graduate student in American History with the Gilder Lehrman Institute at Pace University.
You've been listening to Florida Frontiers, the weekly radio magazine of the Florida Historical Society. Please join us right here again next week. You can also listen as a podcast and find us anytime online at myfloridahistory.org. Production assistance for Florida Frontiers comes from Holly Baker and Connie Lester. Our web extras are produced by Jerry Klein. The program is edited by John White. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ben Brookmarkle.